establish the identity cosine theta plus sine theta over cosine theta minus sine theta minus it's like the same cosine theta minus sine theta over cosine theta plus sine theta. So subtracting this fraction from this should be equal to 2 tangent to theta. So let's start from the left side and we combine these two fractions. Basically we subtract the second fraction from the first, then eventually we have to get 2 times tangent to theta. So how do we combine these two fractions? We need to make common denominator. By the way, do not cancel cosine cosine. When there is plus minus, pretty much this is a block, whole thing is block. So we multiply the first fraction by the bottom of the second, that's cosine plus sine. So cosine theta plus sine theta over same thing cosine theta plus sine theta, and we multiply the second fraction by the bottom of the first, that's cosine minus sine. Cosine theta minus sine theta over cosine theta minus sine theta. Now we have the common denominator cosine plus sine, we can put parentheses around, cosine plus sine times cosine minus sine, same thing here, cosine plus sine times quantity cosine minus sine. Now on the top we need to multiply these two binomials, cosine plus sine times cosine plus sine, pretty much they are same. Okay, remember this is not simply cosine cosine plus sine sine, no, we need to FOIL, we need to multiply cosine plus sine by cosine plus sine. So first you multiply first, outer, inner and last, and same thing here. Okay, so let's multiply cosine times cosine, cosine square, plus cosine times sine, that's the cosine times sine, plus sine times cosine, sine cosine, plus 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 sine times sine, sine square. Okay, that's coming from these two binomials, minus. So whenever we have minus sign, we need to distribute this later, so we must put parentheses around. We don't have to here because we have plus in the front. Okay, here we do the same thing. Okay, just multiply cosine times cosine, cosine square, cosine times negative sine, minus cosine sine, minus sine times cosine, minus sine cosine, and the last minus sine minus sine, minus minus plus sine times sine, sine square. Okay, now cosine sine, sine cosine is like BA plus AB plus BA plus AB. So BA, which is same as AB when we have multiplication, so they are same copies, so two copies of sine cosine. Okay, and we have cosine square here and plus sine square, and we know that cosine square plus sine square is 1. Okay, so do not multiply the bottom, because when we combine two fractions we work on the top and there might be some factoring and cancellation with the bottom, so if we have to multiply we'll do that later. Cosine square plus sine square is 1, cosine sine plus sine cosine, same thing, so two copies of sine cosine. So we should have same thing inside here, cosine square plus sine square, that's 1. Okay, so minus 1, negative cosine sine, negative sine cosine, they are same, both negative, so negative two copies of sine cosine. or cosine sine. On the bottom, look at the top. When we distribute this -1, is negative means -1, this will be -1 and 1, they cancel. Okay, 1, -1 cancel. And looking at the right hand side has double angle 2 theta. Now we need to go and check the double angle formulas, and we know that sine 2 theta is 2 sine theta cosine theta. So 2 copies of sine theta cosine theta is same as sine theta. So we exactly have that situation here, and same thing here. So we'll have sine 2 thetas on the top. We were supposed to get tangent, and tangent is same as sine over cosine. Looks like we are gonna get sine on the top and cosine on the bottom, but on the bottom we have cosine plus sine, cosine minus sine. So we need to multiply these two. Now there will be no cancellation, so let's multiply these two. Just FOIL cosine times cosine, cosine times negative sine, sine times cosine, sine times negative sine. Okay, so when we multiply cosine times cosine, cosine square theta, cosine times negative sine, negative cosine sine. When we multiply sine cosine, this will be positive sine cosine. So the middle two terms cancel. Okay, unlike on the top we have plus and minus, so they cancel, and last plus minus minus, sine times sine, sine square theta. Okay, you might want to multiply this somewhere here and see the whole story. Okay, now that is on the top. This is when we distribute this negative, this will be -1, and this 1, and once we distribute -1, this cancel, and when we distribute this negative, that becomes, this negative becomes -1 times negative, it will be positive. And we saw that 2 sine theta cosine theta is just sine 2 theta, so this is sine 2 theta, and negative times this minus will be positive, and same thing here, that's sine 2 theta. On the bottom we have cosine square minus sine square. If you recall or look at the formula list, cosine 2 theta is cosine square minus sine square. Okay, 1 out of 3. Cosine square minus sine square is same as now cosine 2 theta. So on the bottom, cosine 2 theta. Now 1 copy of sine 2 theta plus sine 2 theta, so 2 copies of sine 2 theta over cosine 2 theta, so 2 times, so sine over cosine, same angles, so sine over cosine is tangent the same angle 2 theta, which is the right hand side. Okay, done.